wants to win the major honours. And I've said this a bunch of times. People keep talking about, oh, well, Newcastle got Champions League this year, so, why would he want to leave? Because the top players don't want to play in the Champions League. They want to win the Champions League. They don't want to be 75, bouncing their great-grandkids on their lap and telling them about that time they played away to Club Brugge in the Champions League phase. They want to be telling them about the time they beat Real Madrid in a Champions League final, which, if we get Isak, is what he'd be telling his great-grandkids.
There was signing in there.
I think so. I didn't buy the injury stuff at all. I thought it was completely fabricated because Eddie Howe said the other day that he'd been sent home because his head wasn't right. Then he said, oh, I'm confident he'll be on the flight. Then all of a sudden an injury just appears out of nowhere. Oh, but by the way, he also had a scan for the injury that Eddie Howe didn't know about the day before. And the scan didn't show anything, but he still has it. Like, it's the same as the Coutinho back injury. He's not injured. He wants the move. They know he wants the move. And I'm of the belief that there are people at that club that want the move as well, because they understand that for them to take a step forward, they need a big influx of cash. And because of the rules of the Premier League, the only real way for them to get that influx of cash is through a major sale. And it looked like it might be Guimaraes a year ago. He ended up staying. The only other one that was ever going to be a big sale for them, a big profit, was Isak. Because as good as Tonali is, they paid so much for him that the profit is not going to be incredible. Like, I could see them getting 75 for him, but they paid 60 for him. So,
Then my final question before we leave this particular topic behind, if it was to happen indeed, how worried would you be if you were Cody Gakpo? Because I think that is starting to be a concern for me. Because although we could be looking at, let's say, 5 starters, that's Isak, Salah, Ekitike, and Gakpo. A lot of them overlap in the places that Cody does already play, and obviously price-wise and speed-wise, talent-wise, I think there's he might be getting pushed down the ladder a little bit there, and that's assuming that Diaz and Darwin, who again both double up his positions left side and central, do leave.
Yeah, I think Cody will leave next summer regardless, because he'll have 2 years left in his deal, and I don't see him being the level of player that Edwards will want to extend into his 30s. So I think that's possibly always been the plan. It was notable that when his name was linked to Bayern Munich earlier in the summer, there was no rush to shut down that kind of rumor. There was no, well, Cody Gakpo is definitely not for sale talk. I think a lot will depend on the shape that we play. So will we stick to 4-2-3-1? In which case, I think he's the reserve left back behind Florian Wirtz.
Left back?
Oh, sorry, left midfield, left wing. Sorry, I'm looking at a picture of Andy Robertson. I think that's, if we stick 4-2-3-1, I think it's Mo on the right, Dom in the 10, Wirtz, and narrow left with Isak up front, and then Cody is the backup on the left. Now, I would argue that last season, if not for injury, he was also a backup, because we began the season with Diaz on the left and Jota to the middle. It was only when Jota got hurt that he started starting more, and obviously he played well. He had a good season, but I don't know that he was part of the plan. We could change the shape, and I think there's a world in which we will change the shape and move to something more resembling a box midfield, where it's 2 number 10s in Dom and Wirtz behind a front 2 of Mo and Isak, with Ekitike able to rotate for both of them. That's a bit more tricky for Cody, because obviously he could play in a front 2. That's fine. and he could be the alternate to Wirtz in the kind of left-sided attacking midfield role, because out of possession, you'd imagine that it'd drop into like a 4-4-2. So he could do that, and maybe that gets him a bit more minutes. But does he have the creativity to be that playmaker if Wirtz is out for any length of time? I don't know. I think this is probably his last season at the club either way.
What's your absolute maximum ceiling in pounds and pennies to sign Isak this summer? All in, including add-ons.
Including add-ons, probably 140.
Guy?
125 plus 15 in add-ons. But I'd like to stick it at 135 as a max, because just they wanted 150. We were willing to pay 120. I think you can meet in the middle, and I think everybody walks away from that happy. I don't want to give them even a modicum of a win.
And Guy, what's your max? If you want him, I presume you do.
Nah, he's crap. I'd rather just I'd just whack Gakpo up top. It's fine. I'd probably say a 130. He's 20. Was he 25? 26 soon. The injury, well, not injury issues. The managing his minutes issues is kind of in the background there. And if we have 130 mil, I mean, if we don't get Isak, could we then get an experienced striker, get Ekitike as the main striker? Then I know Rodrigo's link go big on a winger instead. Like if it starts going towards 150, I think I'd rather go big on a winger and then buy, like, I don't know, a Mateta type to back up Ekitike myself.
And what about you, Mr. Matchett? Where is your price point on this?
I personally think if you're going to be getting into the realms of paying over 100 million for a player, you've got to be all in on them. And if you think that they are going to make such a difference over the period of 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, to the extent that you're paying like massive record fees on them because you think that they're going to contribute to you winning multiple of the big 2 trophies, I don't see that there is a reasonable difference between 100 and 150, if I'm being honest.
See, this is the thing. I was actually talking to somebody about this yesterday. Like, even though the difference between 10 and 20 million and 130 and 140 million is the same difference, it's still 10 million. It's a much smaller difference when you're dealing with 130, 140 million. Like, as a percentage of the deal, it's a much, much smaller deal to pay that extra 10 million. And with the way we seem to be highly aggressive in the transfer market this summer, I think we will have a willingness to spend. But I do think we've done an incredibly good job at controlling the transfer market this summer. Like, if you look at what we've done, we went and agreed terms with Frimpong and got that one done early and had that in place, in my opinion, as a bit of a bargaining chip for Florian Wirtz. I think he would. Frimpong, I think he's a player we liked, but I think he was very much debate to try and hook the bigger fish. We probably would have done it anyway, but I think we waited on that one to ensure that we could get Wirtz done. With Florian Wirtz, we convinced him. He turned down the other moves, and then we moved. And we were able to bring that price down. And I know we paid 100 million rising to 116. That is still considerably less than what the original asking price was. We did the same thing with Hugo. We drove away the competitors by agreeing terms with him, by convincing him that we were the right move for him, and we were able to bring the price down. And we did the same thing with Kirkes. The original price on Kirkes was 50 million, and there was talk of other clubs being interested. But we sold him on the move to Liverpool first, to the point where if he had gotten a Liverpool tattoo and put a picture up on social media, it would have been less obvious that he wanted the Liverpool move than what he actually did. And I think we've done the same thing here. I'm convinced that we have done the same thing here. that he has told them, I want to go to one club and one club only. And therefore, it gives us a stronger hand in the negotiations. Now, obviously, we took Ekitike from them, and that was their backup plan. But you have to remember as well, Ekitike has turned them down twice and seemingly didn't want the move this summer either. So it may well have been a case where in those discussions with them, we said to them, look, if you want Hugo, you go get Hugo and we'll take Isak. And they were okay with that. And then they went to try and get Hugo, and Hugo said, I don't want to go to Newcastle. So we thought, fuck it, why not? But maybe there is another piece that we can work where we know we want Guehi, we know they want Guehi, and maybe we walk away from Guehi and let them get the centre-back they've chased for a year and a half now as part of a silent side deal. We've done that before with other players where we've walked away from our interest to secure a better target.
Ornstein's tweeted, by the way. Isak wants to leave Newcastle. Absence from Celtic-friendly Asia to a 25-year-old preference. Newcastle keen for Sweden international striker to stay on improved deal, but also exploring potential replacements. So I'm guessing the potential replacement is the only newsworthy thing there.
I bet it's Benjamin Sesko. That's what I think that's who they go for. He's the only big money striker left, really.
I mean, if they get Visser and Sesko, that's pretty good, to be fair.
That's pretty solid. If they get Visser, Sesko, and they can still do the Calvert-Lewin deal, it's pretty clear he wants that move, and they've wanted him for a while. Like, they come out with 3 strikers plus Asula, gives them 4 new forwards. I think that's a really strong group for them, and they'd be, you'd imagine, significantly in the profit as well. So the talk of improved contracts is nonsense. They can't afford to give him the new contract that he wants. It's as simple as that. Eddie Howe has been very clear on that.
The only thing they could have done is if they offered him like 200 grand a week, but put in a release clause of like 100 mil or something, may have tempted him. But yeah, then why wouldn't you just accept 150 mil now?
See, that's the thing. That's the thing.
One final bargaining chip which we may have is that we do have a few players who can or will leave this summer. So just curious as to which one player in our squad both of you think is A, the best fit for Newcastle, and B, is, a viable option for them if there was any kind of either exchange or second deal to be done there, just to bring the Isak fee down a little bit.
I think there's probably other people who fit better, but I think Eddie Howe would really like to have Harvey Elliott. I know they've just bought Alanga, who will probably play on the right, but if Gordon keeps not performing, you could play Alanga on the left, Elliott on the right, or if you want to because Newcastle's issues sometimes is breaking down low blocks. So if you take out Joelinton and then put Elliott as the 10, and then Alanga and Barnes or Gordon behind the new striker, I think that gives them a new weapon in the team. But I think Eddie Howe would probably want Elliott.
I think Elliott would make a lot of sense for them as a squad player, not as an every game starter, because they've, like Guy said, they've just bought Alanga, and they are a counter-attacking team, so pace on the counter is absolutely vital. But as Guy laid out there are multiple scenarios in which Harvey Elliott would fit quite well and help them, because at this point, there are a lot of games where even though they want to be a counter-attacking team, they're kind of forced to have the ball, because there's just a lot of bad teams in the league. And they let Newcastle have dominant possession. But as Guy said, Newcastle can't break down deep blocks because Gordon is hopeless in that scenario. The midfielders are very, very good, but they're not lock pickers, as good a passer as Bruno Guimaraes is. He's not someone that sits on the edge of the box and just treads through balls into little gaps that other players don't see. So I do think Harvey is one. What about Darwin?
See, I would have said Darwin would have been a good one, except
Darwin is mine.
I don't think politically, let's say, you can say to Newcastle fans, we're signing Nunez as the replacement for Isak. They would riot.
Be funny though, wouldn't it?
But what if they don't sign him as the replacement for Isak? What if they sign him as the second striker that they wanted to bring in, and they signed Sesko? So they